There's a teaching that every spiritual tradition points to, but few dare to speak directly. The very thing you're seeking through spiritual practice already lives within your ordinary, messy, beautifully human experience. But somewhere along the way, we learn to look everywhere except right here. If you've been collecting practices, attending workshops, and following teachers, beautiful, these are sacred steps on the path. But if you find yourself exhausted from trying to maintain a spiritual version of yourself, if you feel guilty when you're not aligned 24/7, when you catch yourself monitoring your thoughts like a spiritual performance review, you might be ready for what comes after seeking. Today, I want to share 5 insights that help me understand the difference between practicing spirituality and embodying it, between seeking the divine and recognizing it was never actually hidden. This isn't about abandoning your practice. It's about understanding what practice truly serves. What I'm about to share might feel like coming home to something you've always known but forgot you knew. Let me start with something you might recognize in your own journey. You wake up and immediately check your spiritual temperature. Am I grateful enough today? Positive enough? Aligned enough? You scan your thoughts like a security guard, monitoring for any negativity that might slip through. You've turned your inner life into a performance review, and your soul into a student that never quite graduates. Maybe you catch yourself having a human moment, feeling irritated, jealous, or just plain tired, and immediately feel like you failed some invisible spiritual test. You think, I should be beyond this by now. I've done the work. I've read the books. Why am I still so human? And in that moment, you're measuring your spiritual worth by how little humanity you're expressing. I lived this for years. I spent hours meditating every morning, attended every ceremony I could find, spoke fluent spiritual language. From the outside, I looked awakened. People would come to me for guidance, and I'd share all the right teachings. But here's what I never admitted. I was living in 2 completely separate worlds. There was the spiritual me, who was always ascending, always grateful, always in flow. And then there was the human me who still got genuinely frustrated in traffic, who felt petty jealousy, who sometimes just wanted to eat pizza and watch Netflix instead of journaling about my divine purpose. I thought these were 2 different people, and I spent all my energy trying to kill off the human one. The day I realized these weren't 2 different people, that they were both me and both sacred, that was when my real journey began. Here's what I discovered, and what every spiritual tradition ultimately points to, though we often miss it. The divine and the human aren't separate things that need to be united. They're not 2 puzzle pieces waiting to be put together. They are one reality that we've learned to see as separate. Your spiritual practice isn't meant to make you less human. It's meant to help you be fully human without apology. It's not about transcending your humanity. It's about bringing consciousness to your humanity. When you're stuck in traffic feeling frustrated, that frustration isn't a sign that you're not spiritual enough. It's simply life moving through you, and you get to choose how conscious you want to be with it. The paradox is this: the more we try to be spiritual, the more we split ourselves in half. But the moment we stop trying to be anything other than what we are, with full awareness, that's when we discover what we were seeking was never actually missing. The first insight that changes everything has to do with the parts of ourselves we've been taught to hide. What you call your shadow, your anger, your fear, your jealousy, your petty thoughts, these aren't spiritual failures that you need to transcend. They're not evidence that you're not evolved enough. They're aspects of your wholeness that got exiled somewhere along the way. Most of us learned early that certain parts of ourselves weren't acceptable. Maybe your anger wasn't welcome in your family. Maybe your sadness made others uncomfortable. Maybe your needs were too much. So you banished these parts, thinking that spirituality meant becoming someone who didn't have these feelings anymore. But here's what I've learned. True spirituality isn't about eliminating these parts of yourself. It's about bringing consciousness to them so they can serve your highest good rather than sabotage it from the shadows. Let me share a story that illustrates this perfectly. I worked with someone who'd spent years trying to love away her anger through meditation, affirmations, and forgiveness practices. These are beautiful, powerful practices, but she was using them like spiritual weapons against parts of herself. Every time anger would arise, she'd immediately try to breathe it away, think positive thoughts, or remind herself that she should be grateful instead. She was treating her anger like a spiritual emergency that needed to be fixed immediately. When she finally learned to dialogue with her anger instead of banish it, to actually ask it what it was trying to tell her, she discovered something remarkable. Her anger wasn't destructive energy. It was her inner guardian, desperately trying to protect her authentic voice that had been silenced for years. Her anger became her compass to healthy boundaries, her guide to what was truly important to her. This is the paradox that changes everything. Your darkness isn't the opposite of your light. It's your light that hasn't been fully understood yet. Your anger isn't the opposite of your love. It might be love with boundaries. Your sadness isn't the opposite of your joy. It might be joy that's been suppressed so long it's turned inside out. The goal isn't to eliminate your shadow. The goal is to develop such a loving, conscious relationship with all parts of yourself that nothing needs to hide in the basement of your psyche, running your life from the shadows. When you stop trying to be the good person who never feels difficult emotions and start being the whole person who feels everything with consciousness, that's when you reclaim the power you've been giving away to your own disowned parts. If this feels different from what you've been taught about spirituality, that's completely natural. Most of us learned that being spiritual meant being nice, positive, and peaceful all the time. But we're moving from spiritual kindergarten, where we try to be good, to spiritual maturity, where we learn to be whole. And the second insight we're going to explore goes even deeper into this territory of sacred wholeness. The second insight goes into territory that most spiritual teachings avoid, but it's essential for your wholeness. Sometimes what we label as depression, anxiety, or feeling stuck isn't a spiritual failure that needs to be fixed. It's not evidence that you're not manifesting right, or that your vibration is too low, or that you need more healing. Sometimes these feelings are actually a spiritual emergence, your soul's way of saying, I refuse to live unconsciously anymore. Your soul sometimes speaks through discomfort, because comfort has become unconscious. When life is running on autopilot, when you're going through the motions but not really living, sometimes pain is the only language loud enough to get your attention. Your pain might not be the problem that needs solving. It might be the solution trying to emerge, the truth trying to break through, the authentic life trying to be born. I want to share something I've rarely spoken about publicly because it illustrates this perfectly. My deepest, most debilitating depression came right after I had successfully manifested everything I thought would make me happy. I had the perfect relationship, the dream job in the spiritual field, a community that celebrated and looked up to me. On paper, my life was everything I had visualized and affirmed and worked toward. I should have been grateful. I should have been radiating joy. Instead, I felt completely hollow, like I was living someone else's life. I remember lying in bed feeling like a fraud, thinking, what's wrong with me? I have everything I wanted, and I feel dead inside. I was so ashamed. Here I was, teaching others about manifestation and spiritual growth, and I couldn't even appreciate my own supposedly perfect life. Looking back now, I understand that depression wasn't my failure. It was my authenticity, refusing to accept a life that looked right from the outside but felt completely wrong on the inside. My soul was staging a revolution. This is what I learned from that experience. Sometimes your soul would rather have you feel the sacred discomfort of truth than accept the numbing comfort of illusion. Your soul isn't interested in your comfort. It's interested in your authenticity. It's interested in you living the life you actually came here to live, not the life you think you should want. Your breakdown isn't the opposite of your breakthrough. It often is your breakthrough, just wearing work clothes. It's your authentic self trying to crack through the shell of who you think you're supposed to be. The depression, the anxiety, the feeling of being stuck, these might be contractions before the birth of who you really are. And this understanding leads us to perhaps the most important insight of all, one that completely shifts how we understand healing, wholeness, and what it actually means to be spiritually mature. Because what I'm about to share might challenge everything you've been taught about what it means to be healed. The third insight is revolutionary. You are not a broken thing that needs fixing. You're not a project under construction, waiting to finally be complete enough to deserve love. The healing industry has built itself on the premise that you're fundamentally flawed. We're told we have trauma to heal, limiting beliefs to clear, patterns to break. And while these practices can be beautiful, they can also become another way of saying you're not enough as you are. But what if the deepest healing isn't about fixing what's broken? What if it's about recognizing you were never actually broken? What if you're already whole, and healing is simply remembering this truth that got buried under criticism and conditioning? You are not a problem to be solved. You are a mystery to be lived. You're not a rough draft. You're already the masterpiece, learning to see yourself clearly. There's a Japanese art called kintsugi that illustrates this perfectly. When pottery breaks, instead of hiding the cracks, Japanese artists repair it with gold. The breaking becomes the most beautiful part. Those golden veins running through the ceramic are more precious than the original piece ever was. The breaking wasn't a tragedy. It was the beginning of transformation into something more beautiful. Your wounds, struggles, scars, the times you fell apart, these aren't bugs in your system. They're not evidence you're defective or something went wrong. They are the golden threads that make your story uniquely sacred. They're where your humanity cracked open and let light shine through. They're proof you've lived, dared to be vulnerable, survived things that could have destroyed you. So here's the question that changes everything. What if, instead of trying to heal yourself into imaginary perfection, you simply learn to love yourself as a gloriously imperfect expression of the divine? What if your anxiety isn't a disorder to cure, but a sensitive soul feeling deeply in a chaotic world? What if your depression isn't just a chemical imbalance, but a spirit trying to get your attention? I'm not saying ignore your pain or avoid support. I'm saying, what if the deepest healing happens not when you fix all your problems, but when you stop seeing yourself as a problem? What if wholeness isn't having no broken parts, but including all your parts, beautiful and messy, healed and healing, in one loving embrace? The fourth insight might feel uncomfortable, but I share it with love. Sometimes our most sincere spiritual seeking becomes the most sophisticated form of spiritual avoiding. Think about it. When we're always reaching for the next level of consciousness, the next healing workshop, the next teacher who might have the missing piece, we're living in constant, not yet. We're telling ourselves that peace, joy, wholeness exists somewhere in the future, after we've done more work. But here's what I've noticed. Sometimes seeking itself becomes a way of avoiding the present moment. We're so busy trying to transcend our current experience that we miss the sacred ordinary moment right in front of us, so focused on becoming enlightened that we forget to be awake to what's actually here. The spiritual path can become another form of perfectionism, always reaching, always improving, always becoming, but never quite arriving. I invite you to ask yourself, not with judgment, but with genuine curiosity, what am I really seeking? Here's what I've discovered in my own journey and sitting with hundreds of people. Often what we're seeking out there in workshops and ceremonies is simply the permission to be who we already are, in here. We're not looking for a better version of ourselves. We're looking for courage to stop apologizing for the version we are. We're not seeking enlightenment. We're seeking permission to be human without shame. We're not looking for healing. We're looking for radical acceptance that maybe we were never as broken as we thought. Sometimes what we call spiritual seeking is really delayed self-acceptance. We're waiting for some external authority to tell us it's okay to be exactly who we are right now. But what if that permission can only come from you? True spiritual maturity isn't about transcending your humanity. It's about bringing consciousness to your humanity. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about being fully, unapologetically yourself in relationship with the sacred. The highest teaching isn't complex meditation or esoteric knowledge. The highest teaching is radical presence to what is, radical honesty about who you are, radical acceptance of your perfectly imperfect human experience. When you stop trying to escape your humanity through spiritual practice and start bringing awareness to it, that's when real transformation happens. Not transformation into someone else, but into the fullest expression of who you've always been. The path isn't about leaving yourself behind. The path is coming home to yourself so completely that you recognize the divine was never separate from your ordinary, beautiful, messy human experience. The fifth and final insight is what everything else has been pointing toward. Your authentic self isn't something you need to find, create, or become. It's not hiding somewhere waiting to be discovered. Your authentic self is what remains when you stop pretending to be who you think you should be. It's what's here when you stop performing for others, stop managing your image, stop trying to be the spiritual person or successful person or perfect person. It's the awareness that's been witnessing all of this trying, all of this seeking. Every spiritual practice you've ever done, every meditation, ceremony, workshop, every book you've read searching for answers, all of these are invitations to the same recognition. You are already what you seek. You have always been what you seek. The divine you're looking for isn't somewhere else, waiting for you to become worthy. It's the very consciousness through which you're seeking. It's the awareness, reading these words right now. It's the love that made you want to grow in the first place. So what does this mean practically? The highest spiritual practice isn't complex meditation, though meditation is beautiful. It's not esoteric rituals, though ceremony can be profound. It's not perfect diet or perfect thoughts or perfect anything. The highest spiritual practice is radical honesty. Feel what you feel without shame, all of it. The joy and grief, love and fear, peace and rage. Say what you mean with kindness, even when your truth feels inconvenient. Be who you are with courage, even when who you are doesn't match who you think you should be. This is the path. Everything else, every practice, every teaching, every technique, is preparation for this moment when you stop trying to be spiritual and start being real. When you stop trying to transcend your humanity and start embracing it so completely that you discover the sacred was never separate from it. The most revolutionary thing you can do in a world full of people trying to be someone else is to be unapologetically, courageously, authentically yourself. So here's the invitation. Don't stop your spiritual practices. Understand what they're truly serving. They're not meant to make you more spiritual. They're meant to help you recognize that you never stopped being sacred. Stop trying to become spiritual. Start recognizing that you already are. Your soul doesn't speak in spiritual jargon. It speaks in the language of your authentic truth. If this resonates with something deep inside you, know that you're part of a quiet revolution of people choosing authenticity over performance. Share below. What's one way you can honor your authentic self today? Your truth might be the permission someone else needs to embrace theirs.